Good afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Mystic Hermit. The puppies have a bone, fresh bones, that I simmered for broth because I took them out for a walk, but then Lovey started yanking on the cords. I brought them in to have their bones. I didn't want to be yanked around on the leashes. Wasn't up for it. The old lady wasn't up for it. It's a lovely day. It's warm. And late tonight, in the cover of darkness, I think I'm going to let them run out there and hope they come back okay. They did the other night. They know their way back, I guess, but it's a risk. But I'm continuing to have just a very challenging time period of it. Excited for where God's leading, but there's things that come up that really get to me. I came across the letter that I wrote for my son for his confirmation, and many misgivings about having him be confirmed. He wanted to, and what I wrote, I was so naive and so sincere about it, and I should have protected my son more, to know that he wasn't a blind follower type. Yeah, I didn't know enough myself. I knew, and he knew about the gambling thing, but he was all with it to help make changes, to help it get better, to get away from the temporal and to help with the spiritual and to build up the church. And I guess that's okay, except it wasn't his calling, obviously. So, but I'm sorry that he went the other way. So I'm very concerned for his soul as far as the anger that he had against God then and against churches in general and priests and things. So I've got lots of praying to do and lots of asking God to forgive me. And my son, I have asked, I will leave a letter for him about, I had told him it doesn't matter if he's in the Catholic Church or not. I've thought of a very dear friend who was a religious sister. She was brought up Catholic, and her dad was abusive. They had 8 children or 9 children, and he abused her. She was the eldest daughter, and he abused, I think, 3 other daughters, or 2 others. 2 he didn't mess with. And what a childhood she had as the eldest, too. Just terrible. But she went into the convent to be a teacher. She got her education through them, which was lovely. But after about 10 years, she left the convent. And it wasn't her calling. And her best friend left the convent. So, and then my friend, though, she left the church totally. And her friend did. Her friend's brother left. He was a priest. It was after Vatican II. They're older than me. But my friend is such a lovely person. She has different ideas now, totally different. She's more New Age. And, but she never really said too much about my becoming Catholic, other than at times, well, you'll find out and you'll learn, you'll realize, because I was filled with such enthusiasm and vim and vigor, and I still am. It's a great place for people of a certain pattern. And it's very secured, too. It's very structured. And that's very reassuring to people who need that kind of structure. And even those who keep going spiritually, as I say, who can keep a cover. Not if you're like me and you were born a mystic, and you keep growing and growing in ways that most don't have like LS, here she is, she can't be involved because of where she is spiritually. They couldn't cope with her ecstasies. So, if God destines you for a life of part, you've got to accept it, and that's what I struggle with from time to time. And I'm the kind of person, if I'm in something, I want to be able to support it fully. But I can't support things that aren't truth, that are silly. I shouldn't have called them stupid. I'm stupid. I'm stupid for leaping in. I leap into things. But God wanted me in the Catholic Church to learn the spiritual and the mystics and the truth, and to have somewhere to go spiritually, to grow. Had I not found Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, and many others, even Garrigou Lagrange, and of the 1900s, and the wonderful people I've met, and my spiritual father, and I think there are probably many, many priests who would, wish that they had been, and you can read about them, different saints who were priests and became monks in contemplative orders, so that they could grow spiritually. They could have more prayer time, and I'm sure they do that. I know of a priest who left a diocese. In fact, he ran off. He just left, didn't tell anyone, because it was horrible. It was a major conflict. He had made this commitment as a diocese priest, and it wasn't for him. And of course, I could tell, people could tell, at least I could, he didn't fit in as a parish priest at all. He was meant for God alone. He was meant for prayer, a life in a monastery of prayer and study. He liked to study, and I do. I like to research things, but I would love to be. I thought I would be utilized in a parish setting. It's just a message from my cousin. So I would like to be utilized in other ways, but I'm not. And I thought I would be more in a teaching capacity, I'd love to help other people grow past, or even at least to see reality, and then, grasp onto the spiritual path and go with it. But I'm not other people, and I'm extreme the other way. Like, I would like Laurel to think with her heart more, and just humble down, and not be so driven about diocese hermit. It's like it's her personal thing to develop it, and to get everybody to be a diocese hermit. Or I don't know. I think she has a desire to be important in the Catholic Church, intellectually viewed that way, with respect for her intellect. She is very bright, but so are many people in the Catholic Church. But I think she wants to make her mark that way. And it's not always that readable, or, to sit through it. It's so repetitive, same old. Other, if I talk about something, then she gets on that topic, and then it gets very, very heady, very intellectual. But some people really like that. They'll trust that. They'll think, oh, wow, this person really knows. And maybe, but it's opinions. Theology is opinions. my theology. If I talk about God, unless it's a direct experience. But even in a direct experience, then we learn a certain aspect of God, and that is dependent upon our opinions, our personal experience with God. And somebody else may have a slightly different experience with God. So, so here's this. This one, I called it Hanging On for Dear Life. It wasn't called that. That it was the fourth time, outside of Teresa of Avila the first time. But this was with Dr. H, and he had a lot of questions. He wanted to ask questions, he said, because he wanted to figure out what is this process going on, what is going on with this lady that I've known for several years. Then he had known me for 3 years very well, and now he's known me for, since 85, so 41 years, I think, or is that 31? Whatever. No, 25 and 41 years he's known me. So, but he forgets the details. He has so many, he's been with so many people, clients and things, and he didn't charge me or anything, because this was for his interest also. This wasn't therapy help. In a way, it was I had no one else to go to. I had tried people in the Lutheran church, and they were, I had to be very careful with that, or I would have been labeled really a crackpot, or of the devil. That would be that would New Age, and they'd grown to love me, and I just I couldn't have them upset like that, because I'm not of the devil. This isn't of the devil. But that's another reason why God needed me in the Catholic Church, see? But there's my son. He wanted to be in the Catholic Church. And, he witnessed the sign when I was confirmed, and probably thought that that's how it would be for him too. And God chooses different things for different people. He's very spiritual. Now he's turned it all. He's put his energy into the temporal world now, and into his career, which is good. He's a hard worker. But he has such anger and hate toward God now. And I feel responsible in many ways. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. But I'd rather him be in the Catholic Church than in the Protestant. If you don't ever get anything spiritual out of the Catholic Church, and you go to Mass, and you don't recognize it as a major spiritual experience and a mystical event, that's okay. At least you're getting a gorgeous and deep, meaningful worship service. Very respectful, very loving of God. So, everything you get in Catholicism is that. And for the most part, I wouldn't have even found out about so much about this purgatory stuff had I not looked at indulgences more deeply, and realized they weren't just back in the Middle Ages, and had I not known from someone that they still believe in these things now. So then that was just a shock for me, a big shock. It really was upsetting, and made me feel even more alone. But God wanted me to. We have to be willing. What is it that Jesus died to ourselves? The old man must die. The old lady must die. We be reborn of the Spirit, of the water and the Spirit. So this is a birth I'm going through, and that's why it's exciting. But I'm putting together pieces, and then of course I would come across that letter when I was looking for some other things. This idealistic, totally naive, encouraging letter to my son on the night before he was going to be confirmed. And Well, I guess it's not over yet. He may come back around to understand. Catholics aren't perfect. Priests are not perfect. And many of them aren't even that good of people. They've got some serious issues, some of the priests. And that's sad to say, but when you look at how many, hundreds of thousands or however many priests there are, like in the United States alone, they do an amazing job of making sure that they have good ones in. So there's going to be some that will slip through. Here is hanging on for dear life. This is what God said. I am your humble servant. Yes, the deep blue violet petunia has a deep brown cord root. And even though there is much of it exposed to the air and the elements, the root is strong and deep, thicker than one might imagine for such a delicate bloom. And this is God speaking to me with Dr. H tape recording it. So he said to me, and your life may not grow. This is good. And your life may not grow in the ways that your exposed petals think it should grow. And one might not recognize the root as belonging to a petunia, but that which is underground is linked to the source. Then that was with a capital S, source, and is nurtured by God and grows by God. And whatever elements attack the exposed root and bloom do not affect it in the least. The root that thrives below the ground in the deep, rich soil. It hangs on and can grow anywhere. I'm that root. You are that root. Michelle, you're that root. Camilla. It hangs on and can grow anywhere that God desires it to grow. And even withered blooms have magnificent root structures. This never ceases. It is ordained and shall be. Recall your roots. I remember that voice. God saying, recall your roots. Then he said, the number 8 presents itself. And with that, an 8 presented, and it was going sideways like an infinity sign. But it was a figure 8. It says, like a track, it keeps going. And it twists and twirls, never ending, beginning without end, not flat by multi-dimensional. And it was like a tube, luminescent, filled with power, and filled with love. Love is the power that surges and courses through the roots, through the 8. You may speak. Voice said, you may speak. And Dr. H then asked, he said, and he said my name, ask at this point if there's no direct link for your life to the events happening in your life, that you, through this energy, can get guidance in addition to what's already been said. And so God said then, stop thinking and perceiving of it as looking down from above on situations. This is how God wants us to view life and situations, not from perceiving of it and looking down on situations, but stay beneath them, in the depth and in the richness where your roots take hold firmly, and let the love circle the track, this tube 8, and surge through your roots, our inner. You can be very comforted beneath the surface. This does help me now. I haven't read this in a long time. This helps me with my hermit life. Remain there beneath the surface. in your strength, in my strength. And Dr. H asked again, can I ask another question? And this God said, yes, you may speak. You may speak. So Dr. H said this, and this is a very important question for me. For Dr. H it was, is this insight and wisdom? Is it from energy outside the spiritual center of me, said my name? Or is it an energy that's really from her and speaking her own thoughts in a very altered state? He was wondering that, Or are these wisdoms coming from a process outside of her body? See, he wouldn't say God because he didn't believe, he was, didn't want to give to God, get over to God. He had grown up a Catholic. He did not want to, he was more into New Age then. The spiritual, not Christianity. So he was asking this, is it from a very altered state, or are these wisdoms coming from a process outside of her body, outside of her soul, outside of this room that we were in? And the voice said back to Dr. H, this has been indeed a concern of yours, is it not? And he was getting a little queasy because he realized that whoever this was speaking knew him deeply, thoroughly, inside, knew what he was feeling, what he was thinking. So Dr. H answered really quietly. You remember something like this very distinctly. It's been years, 38 years this summer it'll be. But he answered, yes, it has. Honestly, and the voice raised louder and more authoritatively, and the answer is quite clear. The strength, the wisdom, as you call it, it's God, comes from God the Father, and those who love this being very much, and who come from without and settle within the lovely spirit that we have here embodied in this being who now chooses to live on this earth. Does that tell you that this being opens her heart to the outer source of all beingness and energy? And as she, in her time of need, would call for those such as her beloved grandmother. Well, that was 2 years before, 2.5 years before I had called out to my grandmother for help. And she appeared twice. So God, I was like, whoa, God does know everything and remembers everything. And this tells any of you, though, this is what God loved about me and was cared about. And I didn't know. It was really by accident, thanks to my mom and dad and my grandmother and people rearing me as a Christian. Thank you to them. And to love and to be a loving person. And that I knew I needed God. Well, I knew that in my childhood, I knew, I was nothing. That God would help, to turn to God. And he gave me a very good conscience, too. I said something the night of our graduation awards to my band teacher that I was smart. I was embarrassed because he complimented me. And I said something back that sounded so conceited. And I felt so terrible. I was trying to joke off the awards I'd gotten because I was embarrassed. I had gotten lots of awards, lots of them. But the way I said it, he looked at me like, whoa, but he didn't understand that was my awkward trying to downplay it or make a joke of it. And later on, years later, I wrote him a letter. Apologize. Not that many years later, but I did it because it stuck with me. What he thought, and what he thought about me meant a lot because I really respected him. And he thought a lot of me. I was his first chair clarinetist, which was the sort of the I was the person that would, if there was anything that the band he had to start the band with, I was the one to do it. It was the first chair clarinetist in whatever orchestra or band. Or I think an orchestra can be a violinist, but we were a band. And I really was ashamed of my response. And I knew he didn't understand it at the time. I didn't try to clean it up too much. I did a little, but he didn't. He was just stunned and disappointed in me. So God gave me a good conscience, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, God. But this is what this being opens her heart to the outer source of all beingness and energy, to God. God wants our hearts to be open to Him, to the Holy Spirit, to Jesus, to God, and to the loving beings on the other side of the thin veil. The Bible talks about the veil. And open your hearts. Get out of the head, Laurel. If she listens, or else she has one of her persons, her group, who keep up with anything I say to report to her, or to write in these phony questions, so that she can respond in her way of whatever I say, but she doesn't mention me or anything now, which is so good. That's a big progress for her, but it's so obvious to other people and to me, and I hadn't looked in a long time, but I looked recently and noticed this tendency to write whatever topic I was on, then she would write about. So that's lovely, but I sort of like it if she would write on things that come to her. And she'll even put, well, I've written about this before. She's doing that now because I've commented about how she follows what I say. So she doesn't want to have that known. No, it's pride. Think with your heart, Lord. If you want to have a close relationship with Christ, He would love someone like Laurel, her intelligence, her dedication, she has a master's in theology. She's very pleased about that, and it is wonderful. You can get that by reading lots of books, or you can take courses and get the actual degree. Whatever you want, you'll still have all this knowledge. Go for it, people. I chose the book route. I was accepted at St. Meinrad Monastery to do their theology masters, but the priest said, oh, no, I need you here. Well, he did. He was the one in big trouble, and I knew he was in trouble. And I realized, yes, I did need to be there to get that finished off so he wouldn't do damage to anyone more than what he was grooming. But and I didn't need another degree. I already had 4. So, how many do you need? Really, when you're a gimp. So, pointless. None of them have served me in any capacity, really, at this point. So, anyway, that's something, to open your heart to God, to the outer source of all beingness and energy who indwells us. Then he goes on to say, and call out to those who we love, who are deceased. He's not saying, oh, pray for them, they're stuck, they're burning in purgatory, pray for them, they're stuck, they can't get out, they can't be in heaven. No, they're in such a great beneficial place and know so much. He wants us to call out to them to help us. We're the lowly ones. We're the pathetic ones. We're the stuck ones, burning in earth, burning in the temporal morass of stuck in the mud or in the entangling nets. So we got to change our perspective. Humble down and realize, our prayers for them, they're sweet, but for the most part, we need their help. they've got a lot more going than we do, going for themselves. They're right there. They've arrived. My grandmother had arrived. I was the one struggling around on earth, and still am. I am. Goodness gracious. So, and to know that it's God the Father, who's the source of all beingness and energy, who allows the outer love to encircle and reside within our inner being. From without to within, as you hear now, from within to without, as you are without her. See, Dr. H was sitting over there. He was outside my inner being, but yet he could hear and understand. So God asked him, is this clear to you? And he gave him, the figure 8, and that there's, that it's a tube, and it's like got neon in it flowing through. It's luminescent, filled, surging with power and energy. That's love. God is love. So we each have that energy in us. And God just used an infinity symbol, a circle 8, he called it, a tube 8, the infinity symbol, 3-dimensional, to describe it so he could understand and I could understand better. I could understand more than Dr. H, that, if he hadn't used a figure. But that told me a lot about how God's love is infinite. God is infinite. It's filled with energy. It's constantly flowing within us. Within us, this energy, this love, this power. And it's within us and around and outside of us too. So Dr. H sort of stammers, because this is like, wow, He says, I understand the process and the actual belief of, and I have these little dots here because in the tape he was emanating from the Father, and the aspects of that's very difficult for me. And I couldn't even understand all the words on the tape because he was so taken and stuttering. And he's not a stuttering. He's very brilliant. But he's also heart. He's a heart person too. But he was trying to understand this in the head, and it's good. I'm glad he did. God allowed it, because that gives me a chance to share with people who think with their heads more, so that they can understand it, and then they have a choice to decide, well, I want to be more heart. I want to think with my heart more, not be quite so temporally tied with intellect or with even the rules that the church has established centuries ago without really knowing much about what is God, what is love, how is it, how does it operate, we don't ask the questions, we have this idea of this old man on a throne in heaven. And so we have the head of the church have a throne and dress up and be like our sort of our image of God, because we want a human being to imitate that. That's what the Old Testament people wanted, the Jewish people. They wanted a king to represent God for them. And finally God gave in, and then they complained they had a imperfect human, Saul. So then they had a good one with David, but he was imperfect too. And but at least David knew he was, imperfect, and he was better in tune with God. He humbled down, and he felt, and he started using his heart more. But he had someone killed. His soul, big trouble. But he was saved. So he's one of the greatest kings, King David. So, and a great leader of his people, and a spiritual leader also. He turned around. So God continues to say, as you may picture then what was spoken previously, a figure 8 in a tube 8, and picture either a source of energy that you might know, such as water or neon, and that flows through. And that is in 3 dimensions for you to understand. It's not really in 3 dimensions, it's just for us to understand. So we can picture this and understand it. And that this spirit, this entity, said my name, that we have here is a link. A link. Yes, you may even picture her body at a juncture point on this figure 8. And it is at juncture point with the lower back that is of such pain to her. And the source then of all energy of the system that is too incomprehensible for your mind as it is on earth to comprehend, this energy flows, and this body is merely at juncture with the source of all life on this earth and energy without and beyond this earth and planet. Does this help you see? Dr. H then asked this, could you answer this question? Is there in the future a physical healing for the body of, and then he said my name. And God responded, only in the sense of this body, and me, I was on a recliner because of my back, only in the sense of this body, which was me, being linked and nurtured by the ever-flowing source of what you call divine intervention. See, we're all linked. We all have this source of energy flowing through us, within us and without us. God, this energy, this source. We all have, in representative third-dimensional thought, to help us to understand it, we have a tube 8 flowing through us, filled with energy, filled with power, filled with love. It's God, flows through us infinitely, never ending, flowing through us, it's in our soul, in our heart, in our mind. But it's in our center, it's our soul, really. And so is there he was asking, would there be a healing for me from this earthly pain? And Dr. H also asked, God did say that as for my body, he said, in the sense of this body, being linked and nurtured by the ever-flowing source of what you call divine intervention, yes, that there is going to be a link, but it's for the divine intervention. It's with the ever-flowing source. My love and source of all that's flowing links up with others and their flowing source of love, their infinite source. So that is something that is possible. But he said, as for the body that walks the earth, it will indeed know earthly pain. And so Dr. H asked, is there any reason for this unknown source to be in the conscious mind of, said my name? And God said, well, yes, of course. She needs the help. She desires the help. And very simply put, she asked for help. And she receives because she believes and has a great capacity to believe, even more that will come and be shown to her, for her loving kindness and for her espousal to others. And he said that very forcefully, God did. And for her espousal to others. So it was like a crescendo, this last part, when he was answering it, because Dr. H wanted to know, well, why is this information coming to her? You know, and he admitted later, he thought he should know. He's the psychologist. He's got his doctorate in clinical psychology. He works with all these different people day in and day out for 12 and 14-hour days at times because he's so good. People come all from all over to go to him. And he's had to cut back because he's 80 now, still doing it. So, and he had heart issues. He had to have a stent put in. So I haven't heard from him. I need to check on him. But don't like to bother him because he's so busy. But this is what it said. Well, yes, there's a reason, because he says, is there any reason for all this being told her, to be in her conscious mind even? Well, yes, of course. So listen to these, because this is for you too. It's for my espousal. I'm supposed to be telling others, he said. That's why I'm trying to teach and share. And I feel guilty if I don't then, because he said it's for her espousal to others. So I'm supposed to be his mouthpiece and example in this. Of course, she needs the help. She desires the help. And very simply put, she asked for help and she receives because she believes and has a great capacity to believe even more that will come and be shown to her for her loving kindness and for her espousal to others. So he just kept getting louder and more forceful and more like, whoa. On the tape, it was just powerful. He meant every one of those. So recognize that we need the help. And see, I need help right now, big time. Because I'm like, I don't know what's next. I mean, I really am feeling like, and I feel sorry for things that like my son, there's too much for him. All the negative that he witnessed happening with me that I could handle better because I'm a victim soul. And part of that and I was told my sufferings and the sufferings of the church would be made one. Well, I had to see the sufferings of the church and know that my sufferings were my suffering that I was having, seeing these things. Even now, the suffering to realize that people believe some of these things are taking up mental space that they could be using for spiritual life and growth. See, that's what gets to me. I just feel so bad, helpless even. I feel helpless that I can't convince people. Drop that stuff. No one's going to come and put you in prison for it. You're not going to be out of the bark of Peter, whatever that is. Please, just, grow spiritually. Seek the spiritual. Seek God. These people, they have great love, loving, helping other people, pouring themselves out, helping other people. Yet they have the cluttered mind, or like Laurel, just so intellectualizing everything, thinking with her head, because I think she wants to be important. She doesn't realize God could make her very important. Who knows? Maybe not, but it's not being important that matters. I mean, she probably wants to be a saint, be canonized for all the writing she's doing for setting up what a diocese hermit should be. Well, that's fine, but being in God is far better. To be in God and let Him form you. The temporal canonization compared to God, think on that. Feel that. Understand, die to ourselves and let God do with us as He wills. And I'm in a death process. I'm in dead zone right now. And yeah, it's very unnerving. Because you just feel lost. You don't know what's happening, and then you have to deal with things that you did in the past or thoughts that you had, or like I had to accept my dad. I had to take him off the pedestal, and then see him as the regular human being with flaws, and then feel guilty that I was thinking of these flaws, and then I had to come to love him as the wonderful person he was despite just being human, and understand how he was, his personality based on his childhood and the insecurity he felt during the Depression, and when his dad left the family to go to Texas on a pipe dream of hitting oil and had gotten cheated out of all their money, sold some rights to some land that was supposed to be loaded with oil, and of course it wasn't. It was just a bogus thing, a scam. He got scammed, my grandfather did, and it destroyed my grandfather emotionally and in all kinds of ways. He came back, he finally got a job in a factory. He had been a banker. He was from a well-established family in this town. Owned a lumber yard. They were the bankers, He was very intelligent, and he was working at the General Electric plant and didn't even have a car. And it was broke, and they lost their house. They were in rentals from then on out. His wife was from a family of bankers, well-to-do, and so they were humbled down. But my grandfather felt the burden of that, felt the blame or something, and plus he was away from his children and wife for 2 years, or at least a year and a half. At the Depression, it was very hard. My dad, missed his dad, and so he had reasons for being cautious in life, and wanting to provide well for his family was very important to my dad. And he did provide for us, got us all through college, but he wanted us to have very practical, stable careers, not understanding if it's not where God calls you, it's not good. He happened to be in his calling. My mother was in her calling. But he thought, well, my daughters should be teachers because it's so good for their mother. And it's so wonderful because she's such a good mother, and she takes care of my daughters for me. And, so the mother does that. That's her role, because that was his mother's role in another time period. So I had to understand all this. And then also make sure I wasn't blaming for what a flop I am, flopping around. I was going to do some caulk. I haven't done it again today because I'm struggling. I'm struggling in the oceans of God's love and mercy. I'm treading water, swimming but splashing a lot, not making any progress. The waves are pushing me back and going over my head, and I'm drowning at times, feeling like I'm lost, and I'm feeling terrible about my son. And of course, I'd forgotten I'd even written a letter to him before. There it was. I saw it when I was finding this stuff. Oh dear. So see, God is working with me. That's the joy, is that I know with all these things falling into place, and even this. So I'm espousing this. It's yours to your espousal. Need the help. Know you need help. Desire help. Ask for help. Simply put, he says, ask for help. And you receive because you believe. You have to believe and have a great capacity to believe in God. Believe in God with everything you've got. And more will come and be shown. But I know myself, when I get dithered about the temporal Catholic world, my mind isn't open to hearing God speak his beautiful truths, his mysteries, his lover's secrets of the universe and of this world, even of the beauties and how I should go forth. and what's important to him for me, how he wants to take care of me, and ways in which I can take care of others, then I'm not listening because I'm in a stir about some dumb stuff that people in the 12th century or the 5th century, and they just kept believing it because they didn't know better. They couldn't help it. They didn't know better. And they had to have images. At least they didn't make molten images like the Moses's people did, because they needed something to believe in that they could understand. So he was trying to explain to them, and then he had to go up the mountain. He got back, and they needed a golden calf to worship because they needed something tangible and temporal. We do the same thing now, except we use words and ideas of stuff. We flesh in the concepts. But we start believing stuff that just isn't true. And then that consumes us, and it's very negative. And it creates a kind of a fear and pride that somehow we're better than the people who have died, and we know more, so our prayers will help them. Because they're lost and they're stuck. When in actuality, we're the ones that are lost and stuck. We haven't died. We haven't died to ourselves even in earth. We're too busy doing all these things being important. I haven't died to myself enough. Is when we die and we put ourselves all to God, that's when we can start listening. And we know we need help then, and we have the belief. And loving kindness. Now, a lot of people have the loving kindness part. And once you have experiences and you hear God and you are touched by God and you know He's in you, and this energy and this power and His love is infinitely flowing all the time within you and all around you. His Spirit, His truth, His love, this energy, and it's God, then we have something to talk about or to write about. But before that, it's just our ideas, our opinions, our little mental thoughts. So, that is that. I didn't. Let me find. We still haven't gotten to this part. I have to find it. I'll just have to find it in one of my other notebooks. Where's my little, here. I guess there was another time that God spoke. That's that time. Then, but it was pretty much, He let me know, while on earth, I'm going to know earthly pain. Not going to be an earthly healing. But Dr. H couldn't remember that. So over the years, he every now and then keeps wanting to have me healed. Patches to buy. This pain patch thing that he had, that he was involved in, and different stuff. Here, the wedding of the soul. I'd better do that separately still, but it wasn't in that. But this had miracle with it. This was fun. And it had a forewarning from April before. I'll have to get my journal from back in 1988 in April, when I had the forewarning of the surgery that I was going to have, that I had no clue I was going to have. Well, 87 would be. And then in 88, I had the forewarning. I woke up with the invitation. The invitation to a wedding that was going to happen in June. So that got exciting. And so if I tell you about these things, see, that'll get you sort of tantalized to get into God's world, into God. And then he'll have things to tell you, to help you with, to lead you forth, and fun too, to get into the numinous of God. It lights your fire to have that energy that's going through us, that love, that power and source. And you'll be on your way in the spiritual life. And the church is so good with that. Those of us who have been to Mass daily, twice a day, whatever, you have that wonderful spiritual experience with the Mass right there. That helps. See, so I need to be in the Catholic Church, but swimming out in the ocean. I need to keep swimming and growing, calling out to God, needing God, and everything that was said here. You know, that God said what he likes and what he needs of us to be primed for, our hearts, the love. And from there, dying to ourself and letting God take it from there. See, he gives me the topics to talk about. And before, when it was doing my blog, which is called The Catholic Hermit, and I think I've called it different things because I just didn't want to upset Laurel. I was trying just to, calm her down so she could have her blog and not keep detracting mine. But it didn't work, so that's why I did videos. The Holy Spirit said try videos. And I think she's doing very well now with it. Pretty well, I'd say. And she might understand after she hears of this, she may decide, hey, I'll try the spiritual way and think with my heart and give up on the intellectualizing and pray and ask God to tell. I'm praying for her that God will tell her what he wants her to write about. Maybe it's something that I could talk about. God can talk to her and tell her, what about this topic? But for now, I want us all to be thinking about this and what actually is the church. What is it actually? What is prayer? What is love? And so this morning I had that answer. A great aspect of love is taking care of the beloved or another. And that can include our taking care of God in what pleases him, in his will. Doing his will and doing his wishes takes care of God because that's what he wants so much for us. He's all about us. There's really nothing that we can do for him that will please him more than getting ourselves where he wants us to be. One with his love, to know his love and to become his love, and to become as him, united with him. It takes us to become spiritual being. God is spirit and truth also. We have to have truth in us. So I hate to say it, but if you still are thinking that God is fearsome and you're going to be in some place that you're going to be burned and only people on earth, or if you do nice things now and collect your indulgences is the way you get out, that's not truth. That's none of what anything God says. In the Bible, he doesn't say it, nor in private revelation to different mystics over the centuries. He doesn't talk like that. He doesn't say anything of the sort. So part of becoming one with God is to have truth in us. Truth. And we aren't, Jesus does not say, follow what some priest tells you. He has a lot of not too good with priests in his day. We're supposed to follow what God commands, what God says. And Jesus did say, render under Caesar, pay your civil taxes, pay your taxes, stop at the stoplights and stop signs, stay in, follow the little civil laws. But he doesn't ever say follow church laws. He didn't have church laws. He just had spiritual laws in his church, the commandments of God, and he especially pinpointed the greatest commandment. Love God, love. The greatest commandment is love. So, see? So we've got to we're not being disrespectful. If they could, I think the thing with the church is that in the different time periods, they just feared that everything would fall apart if they didn't have a lot of laws and rules, that people would not do the right thing. They were thinking Jesus isn't enough for us. Jesus' teachings, Jesus' church, the way he set it up, it's not enough. He's not good enough. We got to make up laws to keep everything in control so that people won't get out of hand. And if they do something wrong, we make a big deal out of it, and they at least stop that. But they lay a lot of heavy burdens, like Jesus was talking about the Jewish people, They lay a lot of burdens on other people that they won't carry themselves. Well, sadly, in the Catholic Church, they'll carry a lot of burdens themselves too. When we're forgiven, God will forgive. And you're supposed to put it as far as the east is from the west once God's forgiven you. And Jesus talks about going to the person that you have maligned or the one that you have done wrong to and making it right. That's forgiveness. That's confession. But he doesn't say it has to be a priest. But it can be. Priests are people. And it's nice to talk over with someone something we've done wrong. And the priest often enough will say, well, you need to go to so-and-so and apologize. Or you need to pay what you owe. Or you need to say you're sorry and make up for it. Or stop doing what you're doing that's hurting someone. So the priest isn't God sitting there. He knows it. He's a person to talk it over with, to remind you what's right and wrong. And he says what was made up, a prayer of absolution, but he always says it on behalf of God and on behalf of the church. So it's not bad. It's not what Jesus said was necessary, but it's okay. I think as long as we understand, I think if we start thinking of that we're confessing to the priest who's God, or in the place of God, that's wrong. That's not truth. He's a minister of the church. He's administering. He's administering a sacrament that humans developed based on Jesus' teachings and his example. That priest is offering a listening ear and a prayer, and to remind you what you need to do. Talk it over with you, a counsel. He's a counsel, wise counsel. And then they do have this prayer, the prayer of absolution, where he says, I forgive you in the name of God, on behalf of God, for the church. Go, your sins reminds us our sins are forgiven. But you can do that in your bedroom with God himself. But sometimes it is good. But if you don't recognize, sometimes it's good to talk over with another person to explain things. But I think if we had patience and we sincerely talked it over with God, God in our thoughts would start pointing out things that we need to know. Why did you do that? What do you need to do to make amends for that? Why was that bad? How can you stop doing it again? A priest or a good friend will try to help you with those things. The priests are trained in counseling, so they have that advantage. But it's not required. And people have this idea that sacramental confession is required. It's recommended once a year, that you at least go once a year. But you're not going to be in trouble if you don't. But if you don't confess your sins with God at all, or you don't talk it over with anyone to get help if you can't figure out ways to stop, or you need encouragement, or you don't know to pray, begging forgiveness from God, and if you don't understand that you are truly forgiven, then the priest is a good place to go, to a confessional, and he'll go over it with you in a lovely, very well thought out, and long term. It's gone for centuries. I'll have to find out. I'll research when it first started, but see, like hermits had all their sins, they dealt with God directly. And then God would point out things like he does with me. He pointed out that letter I wrote to my son. And not that it was a sin, but it was, I think, thought my son was further along. He was more like me, and he was just 12 years old. He was very spiritual, but he wanted to be Catholic, I think for different reasons now. I realized that he saw what had happened to me, and he thought, wow, it was a little bit deceptive having a mystic for a mom, and I didn't realize that it would have an effect, and that how he might be when he found out all this icky stuff. I was an adult, and my sufferings were connected with the sufferings and awful stuff I would be shown going on. But he wasn't, so it hit him raw and hard. And then he got very influenced in the media and in this church, this Catholic university that was very, very liberal, and had, had a lot of, they had gone off off the narrow path, some of those professors and those friars. So they weren't on the tried and true, not of the church's teachings per se, of the scriptures even. So to them, doing things was okay that weren't right. They had a different view of sin. The devil does that. That's what getting off the holy narrow pathway can do. But it's the same if we get into untruths that are just made up and have fear and still they're cockeyed. It's not reality with God, some of those things that have been made up and have been passed on century after century through families. And priests believe it too, I guess. Probably not literally, as some people do, but who knows? But that's just that takes you off the holy narrow pathway also, because it's not reality about God. Now, if you're doing something terrible, Jesus, he got upset. There is a hell. But someone who's given in their religious life, and very sweetly so, and has suffered and suffered for 6 months with some terrible, painful cancer, they shouldn't be fearing and worried they're going to be stuck burning unless people on earth will pray for them. Well, that's sad. Their mind should be filled with spiritual delights and wonderful last words of hope and love of God and love of others and gratitude and promising to pray for all of us. What do you want me to pray for you? When I'm with God, and it's just the opposite. See, so that takes the mind away from all this good. So, anyway, the wedding of the soul, that will be that'll be on a very. It's what God can do for us. Wants to. Well, he wants to be wed to our souls, whether we're male or female. It's genderless with God, but we still uses the pronouns and stuff, but and acknowledges our gender here on earth. But the wedding of our soul is a genderless love. God's love is genderless. So, the spiritual life, there's just so much good and to know. And I'm seeing today, I was real downcast. Already today, though, I'm starting to see, it's not all, I'm seeing the light of how being pulled apart from temporal and from other people as a hermit, as a God's hermit, is to not have the distractions so that I can learn more and share more of God that might encourage others then who are suffering maybe and don't know why, or aren't healed yet. They might be. I could be healed of my physical pain tomorrow. But I've been told enough not, and I can see it's as well not to be, because God's utilizing my suffering very well. And it's always good to be reminded of that. And like that lady yesterday, the Asian woman who, it was weird, because she says, I've just been waiting for a chance to talk to you. I've been watching, and I just thought, if I could just please just have a chance to talk to that woman there, that beautiful woman. And it wasn't out or anything. I realized somehow, thanks be to God, she saw that power of love flowing through me and around me. Despite my ugliness and my being in this mode of unknowing, of great unknowing right now, of other than I know I need God and I love God, but I'm having to grapple yet again with the abject solitude of it. And I'm resenting my dogs because they take so much time and energy. And that's why I gave them these new bones that I had simmered. These marrow bones I bought. And just to keep them occupied. Because selfishly, I want more time. So I've got to go with it. And I've got to get up earlier and get going with what God wants and hunker down with learning love, learning God's love. So until next time, then that'll be the last one. Well, somebody needs to talk to me. Oh, it's just a friend my spiritual friend back in the Midwest. Her husband is going to design this Paschal candle for his parish, for their parish. And there's an example of a couple, like I know one who watches the videos sometimes or had, the wonderful things he and his wife do out among other people. Active life, works of mercy, and it's wonderful. It's not some of ours calling with God, and it's hard. It's hard to accept. We get our own ideas of how God's going to utilize us. And I have to get that through too, through my little old hard head, that God has other things. And for whatever reason, yesterday, he wanted me to make contact with that lovely Asian woman. And it was an uplift for me. It reminded me that God's love is in me, and it's all around me to share with others, to speak, to help the man with his wife, to help him get more excited about moving here. I was there for an hour, mostly watching the daughter. But even so, God used me in a little way. But I can't expect that. So it's just, growing, spiritually growing, swimming. That's how swimming is. Well, I need to get Lovey settled down. Love to all. We need God, we love God, we believe, and He's in us and He's all around us. Love to you all. Pray for me, please. And I've asked sisters on the other side to pray for me. I've asked anyone in purgatory who's burning. Even if they're burning, they know more than I do. They're farther along than I am spiritually. So at least I know that much. And I know it from God, and I know it from deep within, and from my own death experience. Just dying it's a whole awareness all its own that blows away any untruths that you've heard about dying.